You gonna help? I'm gonna make a video now. You gonna help? Give me your paw. Give me your paw. Okay, hi everybody. The first thing to kind of point out is the fact that I made this plural and in feminisms. And the reason for that is there's so many different kinds of ways that people have chosen to frame feminism or to be feminist, and there's a lot of different angles, and I kind of think that that's both like a strength and a weakness of it as a movement, if you look at it as a movement, and I suppose also as a philosophy. Although I feel like in the academic sense, it's a little bit more well defined, maybe. So it's I have the S in the parentheses because there's just so many there's different strands of it, and there's no big feminist boss to say what is or isn't like true feminism. So it's a kind of debate in a way, I suppose. Different feminists disagree with each other on what the movement should mean and how things should move forward. So that's why I have it plural like that in parentheses. So this PowerPoint is called Feminism Redux because it is actually a shortened version of a 95 slide long thing that I called Feminism All the Things. And I'm not gonna like torture you through that whole entire thing, and it's still like a work in progress anyway. I just wanted to throw out these definitions just to get like a handle on sort of basic, fundamental kind of definition from various, dictionaries and stuff. You got the Wikipedia dictionary, Wiktionary, and English Oxford Dictionary here definitions, which I thought were pretty good, basic stuff. So the advocacy of women's rights on the ground of equality of the sexes. Now, you could probably break that down and unpack it. Wiktionary, a social theory or a political movement which argues that legal and social restrictions on women must be removed in order to bring about equality of the sexes in all aspects of public and private life. So again, there's a kind of equating gender and sex there. And Gloria Steinem's, which I kind of like, is she says, a feminist is anyone who recognizes the equality and full humanity of women and men. And I think that one is kind of nice. That, I guess in that one you can see like the binary that some people believe is a false binary. So what I might point out to you as far as like the two dictionary definitions is like, notice that it's not just about a belief, it's about advocacy. First definition includes advocacy, and the second one, it says a social theory or political movement, but I think a lot of people who describe themselves as feminists would say it's not just about the belief that men and women should be equal, it's also a movement, and you need to be involved in, or ideally you should be involved in some kind of advocacy, even if it's in like an individual level or a person-to-person level, interpersonal level. It has to come out, not just be a belief, but it has to be a belief that is manifest in your behavior and things like that. Okay, so on the other side of it, you have the philosophy of, or the opinion that feminism is not a good thing. It's about hating men and these kinds of things. I don't agree with that. I don't think feminists hate men. And I really like this quote from Pat Robertson for a number of reasons. I've got a link somewhere that shows that this is actually something he said. What I think is interesting about it is that he brings socialism into it, and class. That feminists want to destroy capitalism. And I thought it was interesting that like he put that in his critique of whatever it is he thinks the feminist agenda is. The witchcraft thing I think is also a kind of interesting thing to throw in there. If you go back and look at the 1970s, when that era of the feminist movement, there were a lot of women who were kind of like, critiquing religion, established patriarchal religions and things like that, and there was a movement for, like sort of naturalist kind of Wiccan kind of way of practicing spirituality. So I guess that's where that's coming from. Um, Encourages women to leave their husbands and kill their children. Okay. Um, if you don't know this guy, he's a pretty influential evangelical figure. I won't say too much more about him. So, okay, again, this is just kind of a list. You can pause the video and kind of look at this. This is just to kind of get a gist of how many different angles there are on feminism. Feminazi, of course, being a derogatory sort of insult, not really something that anybody claims to be. I think it's important to kind of pull out this particular aspect, this particular angle on feminism. Alice Walker famously rejected feminism in general has a lot of problems, and historically and to the present has a lot of problems, being kind of dominated by white women and their concerns and things like that. And Alice Walker suggested a new kind of a whole new way of framing it, and she called it womanism. And then black feminism, kind of in general, is a whole nother, really important, aspect of it. So Wollstonecraft, let's bring this to Wollstonecraft real quick. I'm just looking at the time, trying to keep it under a certain amount. So you can pause this here too. This is sort of just the gist of what I get out of Wollstonecraft. Those 2 chapters. This is what I pull out of that. Maybe you get something different out of it, or you noticed other things jumped out at you as being important, as opposed to these. But I think it's really interesting how a lot of it still seems really relevant. Like, if women are trying to look beautiful or sexy or whatever, it's because in our society that's how they experience power. And that resonates with me a lot, and in how I grew up and how I experienced the world and everything, and never really consciously was aware of it until, you start reading stuff. You start reading, like, feminist magazine articles and stuff like that, and then you realize, like, oh shit, this is actually going on in my head right now, and I did not even really notice it. So anyway, I think that part is really interesting. 1792 she wrote this, and this is still feels really relevant. And even today, I think, even though we educate girls and boys in the classroom together, we still bring girls and boys as children, bring them up a lot differently. She also, let's see, when we were talking about liberalism, remember the neoliberal videos? We were talking about liberalism with a capital L. So she very much comes from that kind of world, right? Where it's about the rights of the individual and all of these kinds of things. I feel like I read something about her actually writing something that was anti-slavery as well. So she would have been critiquing how liberalism was not just restrictive when it came to women. You're being a hypocrite if you are believing in all these individual rights for people, then that should be for women as well, and also people in the colonies. We shouldn't be enslaving people and stuff like that. And then I kind of sort of related to all of this want to point out this aspect of the history of feminist literature, where there's this very much this kind of distinction between the public sphere and the private sphere, right? So the private sphere is seen to be, private, like the state should not be getting involved in what goes on in someone's private house, for example. That's why domestic violence was not outlawed until what, like the 70s or something like that. And even marital rape was not made illegal until like really recently in some states. Um, so one of the things that feminist literature, and feminist philosophy tries to do is kind of break down those very strict separations between the public and private. Women should also be in the public sphere, running for office. The private life is also not completely separated from the public sphere, and so this is part of where that slogan, the personal the personal is political. It's sort of where that comes from in a lot of ways. Um, so here, I'm gonna zip past this. Here, Wollstonecraft is talking about autonomy, which is the having power over yourself. So bodily autonomy, personal autonomy, um, are Kantian ideas, and you should not violate somebody's autonomy is basically the idea. And in our society, the history of our society, women are having their autonomy violated a lot more than men, and in ways that are seen as acceptable. It's acceptable to violate a woman's autonomy in certain ways. So just to kind of sum up this little section here, um, in this is just my sort of perspective, my take, my understanding of contemporary Western feminism, and the a lot of the issues that it tries to address. I put this picture here because I just think it was kind of widely circulated in 2017 when you have all these white guys standing around um, Trump as he signs this executive order. Now that this I don't know if you don't know what the global gag rule is. It basically says that the United States gives a lot of money to foreign nonprofits to do health work and things like that. So the global gag rule, I think the first one was like in Reagan, and then Clinton signed under Reagan, and then Bush, and then Clinton signed an executive order to get rid of it, and then Bush signed it again, and then Obama unsigned it, and then Trump is signing it again. It seems to like just go back and forth with presidents. Basically saying that the United States can't give any money to a nonprofit that mentions abortion at all. Good boy. Um, See this? This is Buster. I can't get him. This is what keeps interrupting me. Hey, Buster. Buster, look. Can you please stop interrupting me? Thank you. Okay. So, I wanted to end here because I think this is a really nice. I think this is a really nice way of summarizing feminism, or how I think feminism is, or how it should be, like kind of just as a philosophy, or the gist of it is asking uncomfortable questions, um, getting getting accustomed to that feeling of being uncomfortable and exploring things that make you uncomfortable, trying to interrogate different issues and things. I kind of feel like in the last couple of years, the last 2 or 3 or maybe 4 years, it's gotten a lot more difficult, at least, in terms of online conversations. Maybe we could talk about that a bit, because I do think that there's an element of, things getting, um, there people not really being patient enough with each other. If you say like if you say the wrong thing or you have the wrong opinion, it's all hell breaks loose and you get canceled or even doxxed or whatever. And I kind of think we should be a bit nicer and because asking questions and dealing with uncomfortable questions is so important. How else do you get to the bottom of things if you don't explore that stuff? Um, but anyway, like maybe we could talk about that a bit. And I've related to that because I think feminism, a really important part of it, as just as a practice and as a way of thinking, is listening to each other. Not that anecdotes are evidence. Just your personal experience doesn't mean that it's true everywhere for everybody, but your personal experience is also important, and people shouldn't gaslight you. And it's an important part of the story, your story, and we should be listening to each other. Um, so, in my opinion, I like these two things: asking questions and listening, like genuinely listening. I think are a really important part of it. So I'm gonna end there. I think I'll do a part two, and hopefully I'm entertaining enough that you'll want to watch part two. Okay? So thank you very much. I appreciate your patience. Okay, bye.